Apex Legends is my favorite shooting game, and it's not even close. Well, it's sorta close, but Apex is my favorite. I've got over 3,000 hours in this game, and this is only one of my accounts. Apex was the first battle royale that actually held my attention. Sure, Blackout was interesting, Fortnite was a global sensation, and PUBG was a game, but none of them ever gave me the same moment-to-moment rush that Apex does. The mechanics of Apex are built on one of the most fluid movement systems of all time. The way you can chain movement mechanics and character abilities so seamlessly allows tons of room for skill expression. It's such a big deal that even before an enemy fires a bullet, you can tell how good they are just by watching them move around. And the skill ceiling is always growing. This community went from figuring out basic mechanics like slingshot grapples and climbing doors for high ground to wall bouncing, super gliding, and zip jumping. On top of the solid movement, the game prioritizes gunplay with weapons that feel unique, but that can also all be strong if used correctly. Throw in some quirky characters with actual personality and some interesting abilities, and now you have a recipe for a game that can entrance me for years. I have played and loved this game every season since day one. I didn't even quit in season 6 when they lowered purple shields to 75 health. All that is to say, this is not a video to hate on Apex. I honestly thought about not making this video. Right after I finished my script, it seemed like every YouTuber started talking about how the game is dying. And I really didn't want to add more negativity to the pile, but on top of things that have already been mentioned, I've noticed some things that deeply concern me. So, at risk of sounding like a doomsayer, here are some of my issues with the current state of the game. I know I can't be the only person who did this. As usual, Monday before the patch, I rushed over to ApexLegends.com, scrolled through the patch notes, scrolled back through the patch notes, and scrolled back through the patch notes again, and then I thought this has to be a mistake. Respawn, where are the legend changes? I don't understand who greenlit this decision, but somehow, with the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and the return of the biggest hero shooter of all time, Overwatch, Respawn decided that right now was the time to not shake things up. My boy Pathfinder's had no passive for 50 years. Seer and Horizon are terrorizing the ranked scene. My girl AJ is crying in the basement because she lost her spot at the cool kids table. And you're telling me that Respawn looked at the legend balance and thought, yep, good to go. They didn't even leave an explanation, just an empty space where legend balancing is supposed to be. And it's not just about the legends. The current design philosophy at Respawn seems to be centered on making everything balanced, but in truth, balance is kinda boring. Right now, I'd argue that just about every gun and legend in Apex is pretty usable, but there isn't anything that stands out in a meaningful way, at least not in a way that feels intentional. Remember the Spitfire? Remember the Hemlock meta? Remember the release of the Charge Rifle and the Bocek Bow? Yes, all of these metas were awful, but they also gave us stories to tell. Now when we meet new players in the game who complain about the flatline, we can tell them about how bad things were for us back in the day. I can't pinpoint exactly when this started changing, but it seems like instead of making a few things strong on purpose, the devs have been trying to bring everything down to keep it in line. As a result, we end up with things that are only strong by happenstance, like the G7 or the Peacekeeper. Now, I know it can be hard to shake up the meta and not upset the player base, but I've always respected Respawn for taking risks, and some of those risks paid off. But it's hard to get cool things like Evo shields or disruptor rounds when the devs are afraid to make things intentionally strong. To add insult to injury, they created another useless cosmetic that makes it harder to get the skins and items you actually want. I know how difficult it is to design assets for a game, so I don't mean to be disrespectful. But who in this community was asking for battery stickers? Before this season, the new healing animation seemed cool, but now we know it wasn't an awesome quality of life change. It was a tool they could use to sell us something. And this is the trend that's really concerning to me. Granted, I'm old, but back when I was younger, a game was designed first and foremost to be a good game. But these days, it seems like games are seen more as a product. And I understand business, I don't have a problem with games as a product, but I do have a problem with the fact that it seems like only changes that can benefit EA financially are being made to this game. We don't get new servers, we don't get progression-based unlocks, and we don't get permanent LTMs, but we can get stickers that we can pay for. And I don't know about you, but this just kind of rubs me the wrong way. If the devs want to keep this game alive, they have to be decisive about the direction they want to go with balancing and make meaningful changes to the meta, not just to the cosmetic loot pool. Speaking of meaningful changes, can we talk about this new legend? Now, I'm no linguist, and I'm technically not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure a catalyst is something that sets off a significant change or makes a difference to their environment. And yet, I can't help but feel like Catalyst doesn't quite deliver. Don't get me wrong, she's a fun legend. Blocking doors properly can make for some awesome outplays, especially on World's Edge. But wasn't she supposed to, I don't know, disrupt the scan meta? Wasn't she supposed to be the catalyst that led to meta changes? Because as far as I can tell, in that regard, she is failing miserably. Everyone is talking about how Seer and his scan and his ultimate ability can still be seen through it, but Crypto, Fuse, and Maggie also have abilities that make the wall completely useless. Instead of shifting the meta, Catalyst has become another character like Bangalore, whose vision impairing abilities can do more to hurt your team than your enemies. I don't think she's bad, but she doesn't do enough to counter scan legends. And in my opinion, her ability to control space is less effective for the average player than someone like Caustic. Not only do her abilities do little to no damage, but they also don't provide visible feedback when they're activated, so it doesn't always feel like your abilities are doing anything, even if they are. It also probably doesn't help that she works as a counter to herself. Right now, while people are trying her out, you'll likely run into her constantly, which makes her abilities far less effective. Catalyst is a legend designed to be stronger when she's played less, but that's not a great idea when the season's performance depends on people playing her more often. All of these factors work together to make Catalyst feel kind of lackluster as a legend, so I'll honestly be surprised if she doesn't fall to a fairly low pick rate over time without a buff. Okay, maybe I'm off base with this one, but I can't be the only one that's getting sick and tired of Fragment. I know the pros and streamers think World's Edge is God's gift to mankind, but that's because they play ranked, where people actually have half a brain and care enough about winning to spread out. When you spread out and play the different areas, World's Edge offers unique landscapes with varied terrain, tons of rotation possibilities, and usually manageable third parties. But for the rest of us, World's Edge is effectively just Fragment. You either land there and fight it out, or you land somewhere else and see no one for the entire game. I like to, actually fight in my games, so I can admit that I'm part of the problem. But just because I have to land somewhere doesn't mean that I want to. I'm so tired of looking at the same reddish broken cityscape, fighting over loot scraps, and then just praying that other teams are far enough away for me to loot my kills. It's fun on occasion, but not for almost 2 years straight. I've heard some complaints about Promenade on the new map being 5th party central, but at least on Broken Moon, people might land somewhere else, so you can get action at other POIs. Plus, Broken Moon is new, so Promenade hasn't yet worn out its welcome. But we've been looking at the same Fragment layout for years with no changes. Even if you like World's Edge, I think we can all agree that the map has looked and played basically the same for way too long, and that only adds to the feeling that the game is stagnating. The biggest issue I and most other players have with this game is the matchmaking. No matter how much you enjoy Apex Legends, I can guarantee that you've had an issue with the matchmaking at some point. It's a problem that only seems to get worse with every season. Let's get one thing out of the way first. I don't think that Apex has this malicious engagement optimized matchmaking that everyone is talking about. At least not exactly. Before I became a shill for Apex Legends, I played a lot of Titanfall 2, and that game had an interesting matchmaking system. Your first game of the day would toss you into what felt kinda like a mid-tier lobby. Then, the game would reshuffle the players and put you in a lobby intended to give you a challenge based on your previous performance. If you popped off in your first game, you would have slightly tougher opponents. And if you performed poorly, it would pit you up against lower skill players where you have a better chance to compete. And every couple of games, it would recalibrate and you'd see your entire lobby get shaken up. If I had to guess, I would say that Apex is probably operating on a similar system, but with a few issues as far as I can tell. For one, in a game like Apex, where loot is random and where your teammates can make a huge difference, taking the performance from a few matches provides a far less accurate representation of a person's skill than something like the trend in their overall performance or maybe even their rank. I've read dev posts that say things like, just because a person has a Predator badge doesn't mean they've been playing like a Predator for the past few games. This line of logic is incredibly flawed in my opinion. Maybe that person just always drops hot and got unlucky with their weapons for the past 10 games. So you move that player into a lower lobby. But here's the thing, that Predator player who can wall jump at will and basically never misses will still outplay a platinum or lower player pretty much every time. There are some differences in skill that just can't be reasonably ignored. But honestly, this isn't even the worst part, because not only does the game regularly pit you against higher ranked players, but even worse, it consistently matches solo queue players against full teams. For the past few months, I've mainly been playing solo because I'm traveling, and over again, the champion screen and my death screen have been filled with 3-stack masters and predator players. I'm a solo queuing diamond, and my teammates aren't even level 500 half the time. Why am I being placed in a lobby with these players? I have no problem going up against tough enemies, but a ragtag group of 3 people who aren't even talking has literally no chance to beat 3 players at the top of the rank ladder who are playing the game like there's money on the line. There is no world in which it makes sense for me to be in that lobby, but Apex cares way more about putting you into a lobby quickly to give you that sweet dopamine hit than it does about you actually having a good experience. And this is the reason that some of my friends have essentially given up on the game. I've already talked about how the matchmaking can screw you over, but there's more to it than that. Of course, with any battle royale, there's the natural tension that comes from wanting to be the last one alive, but the Apex player base heightens this tension. Every game, people try to land hot and third party every fight they can so they can come out with tons of damage and kills. And you could argue that this is just the way of gaming now, that everybody's always just trying to sweat. But in my opinion, this is likely due to the fact that Apex has nothing else to chase after. Think about it. In Call of Duty, you can run into all sorts of weird loadouts because the game incentivizes using different guns in order to unlock all the camos. But Apex has chosen to connect pretty much all of its meaningful cosmetics to a financial transaction. Sure, the dive trails from Ranked are cool, but they disappear. The only things of value to chase in Apex are kills, damage, and KD clout. So people do what they're incentivized to do and they sweat it out. Remember the anniversary event when they released the Mozambique Damage Challenge? Lots of people were running around with the Mozambique even before it was a meta choice because they were incentivized to. Remember Dummy's Big Day, or Live Die Live, or even Deja Lu? All of these modes change up the routine of the game and place players in new situations that help the community to relax. And the same can be said for modes like Gun Run and Control. Players that care about kills can hop over into these modes and grind it out. But since death isn't the end, players just wanting to relax and have a good time can also play these modes and not feel pressured to perform. And with the kill grinders playing these modes, the BR playlist gets more room to breathe and the game feels less stressful. At least to me. Just imagine how much better the game could feel if every week there was some relaxing mode in the extra playlist slot, or if they actually fixed arenas to make it more fun and rewarding. In the past, devs talked about making Apex more than just a BR. I think that now is the time for them to make good on that promise, and to go beyond the aging formula that they've been sticking to. Like I said, I love this game. I'm gonna keep playing this game, and I want it to stick around. But for that to happen, the devs are gonna have to do better. Anyway, I'm done ranting. But what do you think is the biggest issue with Apex Legends? How would you fix it? Let me know in the comments below. Also, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.